I used to love the end of my shift, the slow exhale after a day pretending to be helpful in a place that seemed built to swallow time. Hema had a way of getting into your bones, even before closing. The lights in that place weren't truly white, more the color of teeth that hadn't met a toothbrush in years. At night, under the humming canopy of bulbs, it was hard to believe morning would ever arrive. But today, something was different. Sharp footsteps echoed past racks of discount pillows. Closing announcements rolled out in 4 languages, unintelligible but strangely reassuring, like a lullaby from a dream I once had. I watched lines of shoppers trudge toward the open mouth of the sliding doors. The floor manager, Mr. Linton, did his usual rounds, clipboard clutched tight, eyes distant. 20 minutes until closing, and still the steamroller of voices and carts and cell phone light. Once the last family slipped out, little girl clutching a pencil-worn map between sticky fingers, the hush fell. That silence always hit hardest in Hema, too wide, too deep. I caught my own reflection in an oval mirror, my hair wild and haloed in static. My badge, dented, blank-eyed. No one looks real under these lights. Jason found me in the faux kitchen section, grinning, unwrapping a muesli bar as if midnight snack time were an act of defiance. 6th night in a row, Tara. And they don't even give you the full-time rate, he said, voice too loud. I swatted at him with a sale flyer. We shared the last bitter jokes about our feast. Maybe dumplings this time, maybe tacos. Jason called dibs on the last cheese Danish in the break room. His rituals rarely changed. He lingered, eyes crinkling under worn lashes. Bet you Linton will check the fire exits and disappear, just like that manager. Remember? 3 years, no one said her name. Swear she never clocked out. I snorted, but something tiny shifted in my stomach. We all knew the story, or pieces of it. But tonight it felt less like a joke. It was my turn for closing sweep. That meant walking the whole stretch. Living rooms through kids' bedrooms, past checkout, circling back. The fixed path, they called it, like mice chasing cheese. The rules were clear. Leave nothing uninspected. Check the underbed drawers. Mannequins must wear a smile. Jason pocketed his candy wrapper, clapped me on the shoulder, and drifted off toward textiles. I tried to ignore the uncomfortable way the fake carpet prickled beneath my sneakers. Don't stay too long in rugs, I called after him. They bite. He threw up a peace sign, already swallowed by a thicket of faux curtains. I started at my assigned end, bedrooms. Always hated that section. Too quiet, too staged. The kind of quiet where you hear your heartbeat and worry the mannequins do too. The beds looked slept in, creases I'd swear weren't there before. A single closet door stood ajar. I nudged it shut, taking a weird comfort in the click. The store began to shift, or maybe it was me. Furniture appeared subtly out of place. A table at a slightly new angle, or a pillow patterned with strange little symbols. I paused at the dining room. Someone, or something, had arranged the chairs in a perfect circle facing one another instead of the fake table. The PA system barked suddenly, static, then a slow, warped voice. Please do not leave the showroom until your shopping experience is complete. It must have been the ancient wires. The sound crawled up the back of my neck. My phone vibrated. Group text. Stay out of lighting. Power surges again. Watch for trip hazards. 2 old rules. We all knew them, but no one said why. One exit sign buzzed softly in the distance. The overhead lights dimmed. A procedural shift, I told myself, to save power. Still, the kitchen cabinets looked deeper than usual in that muted electric twilight. I pressed on. Each step was a ritual. Check under the beds, straighten a pillow here, adjust a lampshade there. I don't know who I was doing it for. Maybe the invisible managers, or some lurking set of eyes in the mirrored glass. But the real terror wasn't the dark. It was the thought that, in a place built to keep you moving, nothing should ever stand perfectly still. A faint metallic clatter echoed from the children's section. The mannequins there had somehow migrated, two by the bunk beds clutching fake plush toys, one tucked under a reading tent. Their eyes, painted just shy of lifelike, seemed trained on me. I took out my phone to text Jason. No signal. Maybe dead zones were spreading. Suddenly, the entire store held its breath. That hush before something important happens, or before you realize you've made the wrong turn. The static on the speakers grew, then faded. I could see my own breath hanging in the air, despite the warm pressure radiating from overhead bulbs. I reached the final display, a model bedroom done in reassuring blues and soft whites. Every surface seemed to hum. I smoothed a wrinkled sheet, fulfilling my last pointless obligation. That's when I noticed. The closet I'd already closed now stood open again. Inside, only darkness. Deeper than the darkness outside the store, thicker than the shadows pooling between the aisles. For a heartbeat, I thought I heard breathing that wasn't my own. Over the intercom, a whisper. Too close, too distorted. The experience never ends. Somewhere, a timer started to buzz. I looked back the way I'd come, and the bed seemed closer than before. The store felt smaller, the aisles pressing in. Or maybe I was shrinking. There was no one left but me, and the mannequins had moved again. I walked, breath shallow. Each step sounded twice. Once from my foot, once from somewhere behind. I told myself it was nothing. It was only the closing ritual after all. They say your mind fills in blanks when you're lost, clutching at memories to make things feel ordinary. That's all I wanted, something that made sense as I walked back past the model beds, trying to ignore how the silence bleated in my ears. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling my heartbeat thud against my palm. Steady, then stuttering as the overhead music hissed back to life, this time too soft to recognize, more like a memory of a tune than anything you could sing. With each step, I was sure I'd see the customer service desk just around the next partition, where rows of heart-shaped wall clocks usually glowed. I never did. Instead, the end of the aisle would swerve, nudging me into another corridor lined with impossible perfection. Sofas staged with cheerful yellow throws, coffee tables topped with fake newspapers, not one out of place. My trainers squeaked on laminate, echoing through the vacant expanse. I kept looking for Jason's jacket in a heap or a flash of movement, but the only sound was the faint buzz overhead and the echo of my own breath. I checked my phone again, thumb automatically swiping up for messages that never came. The familiar network bars had vanished, replaced by a jagged icon I'd never seen before. I tried calling Jason anyway, holding the phone tight as the little spinning wheel just hung, stretching the seconds unnaturally long. A man's voice drifted from a nearby speaker, something syrupy, advertising a weekend sale on kitchen islands. I misplaced my anger in that direction, muttering under my breath as my shoes caught on a stray tag by the carpet displays. I picked it up, expecting something mundane, but instead found a list of features. Highly durable, seamless fit, easy to clean. It took a moment to realize the tag was for a display assistant, not a product. My skin prickled as I dropped it, fighting the sense that it was meant only for me. My route should have delivered me to housewares. Instead, my path funneled between more showrooms, one bedroom morphing into the next, tiny variations in pillow colors and curtain patterns, but always the same, endless loop. I started to move quicker, hoping momentum might break the pattern, swinging past staged closets and fake windows, all those unique to nowhere objects that only exist in showrooms. The lights press in, duller now, some fixtures pulsing like lazy fireflies. Passing the storage displays, I bumped a set of drawers, half expecting them to tumble. Instead, the motion seemed to ripple through the space. Somewhere behind me, glass rattled lightly. I spun, but there was only the pristine stillness of glassware perfectly arranged, rows of wine glasses doubled by mirrors on every side. My reflection was everywhere, multiplied, stretched, always at the edge of the frame. Sometimes the reflections didn't match my movements, tiny details out of sync that my mind struggled to process. I couldn't reach textiles or rugs no matter how many turns I took. Even following the blue arrows painted faintly on the floor brought me back to assembly instructions or another living room set. Moving faster, I traced my finger along a credenza's surface, trying to anchor myself in the sensation of glossy veneer cooling my skin. As I rounded another bend, I nearly tripped over an ottoman, one I'd swear belonged 3 sections back. Then, laughter. Brief, clipped, the kind that bounces off display kitchens and pours itself down the fixtures aisle. I whispered for Jason, hating how my own voice faded too quickly to be real. Nothing answered. With growing desperation, I decided to cheat the layout. Instead of drifting with the aisle, I slipped between 2 displays, ducking under a string of overhead pendant lamps. The world shivered. My shoulder brushed against wallpaper printed with paisleys that seemed to rearrange themselves when I looked away. The room behind the lamps wasn't the break room. It was the same kitchen I'd just left. Only now, the cabinets hung at a slant, drawers open just enough to suggest recent use, plates stacked with unnerving precision. Panic tried to claw its way up my throat, but I forced myself to keep moving. My listless inventory script repeated in my head, as if habit could hold back the growing sense of being swallowed. I called out, willing the sound to carry, but it hung heavy, absorbed by dense, staged silence. My feet brought me to a corner where the lights flickered more violently. I heard a steady thump, soft and wet, out of sight. I pushed through yet another showroom bedroom, half expecting to see Jason catching a nap for laughs. Instead, the only occupant was a mannequin propped upright in bed, slumped back against the headboard, its plastic fingers curled around a mug. The mug read, "Let's stay home." Goosebumps danced up my arms. The PA system, now twisted with distortion, intoned, "Exit through the showroom. Every journey circles home." I shivered, rereading the phrase in my mind, feeling its weight, a command, not reassurance. I remembered the story about the disappeared manager, wondering if she'd passed through this same deluge of endless displays, lost in a system that couldn't end, just feeding itself with devotion or bodies, maybe both. Determined, I pressed on. But with each turn, the layout shifted subtly. The scale model living rooms loomed larger, swelling in impossible ways, as if the dimensions were being wrung out and folded back on themselves like airless linens. I wiped sweat from my brow, irrationally afraid that the dampness would leave a stain, something for a manager to notice the next morning. The air-conditioned chill now felt humid, close, the manufactured scent of cinnamon and pine overripe and cloying. I passed the outdoor spaces section 3 separate times, each with fire pits that never produced warmth. I tried to climb inside one backdrop, convinced the fake glass panel at the edge would give way to an emergency stairwell. Instead, my hand thudded solidly against a wall disguised as open sky, a mere reflection. The sense of distance unraveled, panic scrabbling at the edges of my thoughts. Calling for Jason again, voice cracking, I strained to listen, catching only the mechanical drone of distant vents. I retraced my route past the children's displays, the colors now too bright, making every toy look sharp-edged and cruel. Memories of retail training mingled with flashes of home, what it felt like to sleep in a real bed, the texture of sunlight on your own sheets, becoming harder to recall. Through a narrow gap between armoires, I saw something impossible, a glimpse of myself, back hunched, moving with cautious urgency. But this other version wore a wild grin I didn't remember putting on. The vision dissolved when I blinked, but the sense of duplication stuck. Every mirror now seemed a potential threat. I shoved open a supply closet, hoping to find a shortcut. Instead, rows of identical uniforms hung from wire hangers, all tagged with names I recognized, colleagues who'd left in a hurry or resigned over email. There were no windows in this closet, just another door leading directly back to a redesigned living room vignette. My battery died, the screen fading from low glow to nothing, no messages left to send. I gripped a display vase like it might anchor me to something solid, even as fake lilies tumbled out and spun across the tiled floor. I crouched, fighting the urge to scream, chest tight as a vice. Above, the speakers whispered, every syllable stretched and sharp as glass. "Please continue. Your experience is important to us." Each syllable dropped like a drip of water on stone, wearing down the sharp edges of certainty and of self. When I finally found a door marked exit, it welcomed me with polished anonymity. But when I pushed through, there was only another display, another kitchen, another set of smiling mannequins. The path folded back, relentless, and I felt the tears come, silent, swallowed by the persistent hush of the devouring store. Despair thickened around me, but I kept walking, because there was only forward and another showroom and the quiet shuffle of something almost, but not quite, human moving beyond the lamps. If there was a way out, I hadn't found it yet. But I knew I was not alone. The showroom wanted me, and here, nothing ever truly left. I kept moving because the alternative was to stop, and stopping felt like surrender. After what might have been minutes or hours, I'd lost all sense of real time, tracking only the pulse fluttering at my throat. I found myself in the dining displays, surrounded by chairs that all faced each other in tight, watchful circles. The artificial wood surfaces gleamed in sterile indifference. I wondered who set them like that, or if they'd always been waiting for someone to notice. My sneakers made dull echoes on the floor, the sound swallowed quickly, thickened by impossible stillness. Navigating the aisles, I began to realize the walls did not obey any sense of geometry. The left-hand shelf for vases now became a partition that guided me straight into a maze of office nooks. Desks with their little caddies, pens lined like soldiers, monitors displaying blank blue or static, not a single password sticky note in sight. Each staged cubicle mirrored another from some forgotten corporate parody. In the periphery, I caught movement. Not a human, but one of the new mannequins, no longer plastic smooth but sculpted vaguely in the shape of a tired young woman, hair just a little too real, lips parted as if she meant to say something better, left unsaid. Somehow they were everywhere tonight. In every vignette where I expected a blank dummy, now there appeared a posed figure, stretched on a chaise, one hand raised mid-gesture, caught forever in some in-between moment. I squinted at the lounge corner. There was something familiar in the way a certain mannequin's head tilted, too much like Jason, that lazy, cynical tilt he wore when he thought customers weren't watching. The possibility crawled slow down my spine, each vertebra tightening. I didn't want to approach, but my traitor legs pulled me forward anyway. The primal urge to call his name nearly overrode my fear. I stopped myself at the edge of the display and forced my gaze away. A chill fascinated about my ankles, almost like an air vent. But when I looked down, the floor shimmered in places, then returned to cheap laminate with impossible abruptness. As I navigated through the storage section, a glut of boxes, ironed linens, and fake plants, I noticed how security cameras proliferated. Some hovered from ceiling corners, others crouched behind glassware, almost as if they were seeking, not surveilling. Had there always been so many? Moving under their blind glass gazes, I felt marked. Sometimes, barely audible as a tick, one would actually pivot to follow as I moved. Sweat beaded on my brow, an involuntary confession. That's when I saw the price tags had started to act up. Where they once pushed deals or described finishes, now they glitched, scrolling cryptic phrases. Best fit, last chance. Smiles are always welcome. Stay for the experience. Stay always. It would have been funny if I hadn't heard the robotic PA voice begin again, knotted beneath another layer of static. Discover companionship in every room. Our displays are more lifelike than ever. The sound seemed to come from beneath the floor, vibrating in my knees. Desperate, I skirted an open kitchen set, only to find all the stools now pulled out as if an invitation. In the far corner, another mannequin reclined on the sectional. This one wore a lanyard, badge swinging against its chest. Just visible. Jason too. The rest obscured by a crisp lapel. My nose tingled in the way it does before tears, but I denied myself the relief. Closing that distance would mean accepting something I wasn't ready to see. The lurking logic that the store recycled its own hung too close, so I pushed on, hands jammed deep in my jacket. The parade of displays continued, each a notch stranger than the last. At a dining table, mannequins sat in familial poses. One man, one woman, two children, each locked into bland perfection. But the faces, painted faintly, then more intensely. Then, in the case of the father figure, an actual beard hair or two, glinting dark red in the half-light. The eyes. They glistened and reflected my own horror back at me. Under their empty gazes, I forgot entirely what I wanted to do next. A rolling crackle from above startled me. One of the long light fixtures sparked and dimmed, shadows sliding deeper across the plush rug forest. Music wafted down, sparser now, arranged as wordless voices that almost harmonized, almost spoke. Sometimes I thought I heard my own name hidden among them. Tara. Tara. But logic rebelled. Had to be my nerves, or a trick of the old wires. Past a corridor lined with kids' beds, I recognized the same plush puppy, spotted, grinning. It had been moved. 3 displays back, then 1, now here again. I bent to touch it, expecting softness, and found the fake fur matted, sticky, as if a child's hand had clutched it minutes before. My skin crawled. Footsteps, soft, somewhere between shuffling and scraping, echoed again behind me. When I spun, all that greeted me was a row of mannequins, arms set gently around each other's shoulders, standing as if observing a group photo that would never be taken. Some primal instinct told me not to meet their gaze too long. I squeezed between a bookcase and the Home Office Deals banner, emerging in a chamber where every wall was mirrored, even the ceiling, multiplying the mannequins behind my back. My own expressions troubled me. Sometimes I seemed to smile just a half moment too late. Sometimes my eyes fogged over in a way I didn't recognize. Fatigue pressed on my skull. To keep sane, I started muttering my usual complaint. Rotate your stock, please. Always dust the shelving. Don't let merchandise linger too long on the floor. But the litany felt stolen, recited by some other presence close at hand. I listed the rules in my head, an old retail charm against madness. Yet with every whisper, shadows in the glass sharpened. From above, another camera settled with a soft whir. The red light blinked, little heartbeats. I spoke to it. Seriously, if this is a joke, you've made your point. The only answer was the shifting rustle of clothing and the tap-tap of unseen plastic joints. Just mannequins. Mannequins with too much intention. The next display tried to camouflage menace in normality. A tiny apartment crammed with clever storage, decorative twinkle lights draped across a bunk. I peered into the reflection of a miniature metallic clock, and for the first time saw someone behind me, tall, blank, mid-step, as if paused in pursuit. When I whirled, the aisle sat empty, except for a single mannequin now blocking my escape, fresh pink lipstick dabbed on its unmoving mouth. It had not been there before. I sidestepped, and all at once, a windless chill wrapped my legs, as if the air itself was being sucked away. The mannequins clustered closer, silently encircling every possible path. Each wore an expression somewhere between delight and anticipation, their mouths bent up at the edges, hungry to show off whatever was around the next corner. Welcome, crooned the speakers. Feel at home. Don't stray. See, everyone smiles here. I covered my ears, but the sound pressed inward, bouncing against the glass and burrowing deep. The carnival of faces, the omnipresent lurk of surveillance, the feeling of being appraised, sorted, modeled for some purpose I could not discern. It thickened around me, a horror that could not be reasoned with. I stumbled through another shimmering curtain of beads, breath short, the air now carrying not cinnamon or pine, but a metallic tinge, dry and final. Every sense rebelled, yet the path pressed on, inexorable. My reflection caught again, mouth wavering as if about to call for help, but only welcome music returned from the ghostly speakers, urging me deeper. I was no longer sure what I was searching for, an exit, or just an end to the watching, the constant assessment. But I understood then, with a clarity that made my skin crawl. The showroom was never about furniture. It was always about display. And now, somewhere in here, I was becoming just another piece. The moment I left that chamber of mannequins and mirrored faces, the store's air pressed even heavier around me, thick and slow, as if it wanted to hold me still. My footsteps softened on new, unfamiliar flooring, a coarse, shallow pile, beige and forgettable. Above, The fluorescent strips flickered, playing tricks with the shadows. Every second, the place seemed to shift, not daring to stay idle for long. I wandered into a passage lined with identical white doors. There were no handles, just keyholes and scuff marks. They might have belonged to offices, back rooms, maybe bathrooms, but everyone bore the same flat sameness. I approached with more caution than hope, pressed my palm to the first panel. It swung inward, slowly and too quietly. Instead of relief, I found myself blinking at yet another showroom. This space felt older, the furniture scuffed, armrests threadbare, the upholstery faded to colors older than memory. For just a moment the scene struck me as nostalgic, but that feeling curdled quickly. The light here was dull, tinged toward sickly yellow. Something about the arrangement, couch, lamp, side table, felt wrong, slightly off-axis, less staged than abandoned in the middle of some invisible, unfinished act. A strange discomfort settled in my chest as I crossed the threshold. Was this part of the old floor plan, a relic left over from decades past? The longer I observed, the more foreign it all looked. Postcards yellowed to sepia, children's drawings half torn, a mug, still half full, growing a delicate fuzz at the surface. I backed away, out into the door-lined corridor. Each step, the confusion multiplied. The next door, when I tried it, also yielded a strange showroom. Here, the decor had slipped into neglect, wallpaper peeling from the corners, a rug covered in what looked like ancient stains, an oil painting hanging desperately off one nail. The ceiling sagged, a single bulb swinging lazily. Pulse wild, I tried another. Different, but wrong again. The setting grew more threadbare with each new opening, the displays less believable, more like abandoned sets from a forgotten play. No matter which door I chose, I only moved deeper into a catalog of decay. I called out for Jason, my voice rough and too loud, bouncing off drywall and glass molds. There was only the echo, warped and uncanny. I stepped faster, doors slamming behind me with little provocation, each bang a jarring punctuation in the growing stillness. Panic began to crowd out thought, and I banged my fists against drywall until the pain in my knuckles grounded me, if only for a moment. From somewhere distant, a sound began, barely more than a suggestion at first. A soft, rhythmic tapping. At first, I believed it to be plumbing, a mechanical defect, but it grew sharper, more insistent, like fingertips drumming a steadily quickening message. Every sense sharpened. My arms prickled with sweat. I sprinted through another yawning portal, finding myself in a room entirely walled with mirrors, tall, cracked, smudged by the faint outline of handprints. My own reflection watched with dilated eyes, posture huddled and defensive. I stepped forward, unwillingly drawn to the splintered center pane. My fingertips met glass, and the cold jolted up my arm. The surface began to move, tiny ripples spreading wide. Inside the shifting glass, faces surfaced. Jason, recognizable despite the flickering light, mouth opened in a silent appeal. Familiar colleagues, their eyes glassy, all whispering the same word I could not hear, but recognized from their lips. One was a manager who left months ago, supposedly for a bigger opportunity. Another was that woman who joked too loudly in the break room, now stilled and pleading. A murmured voice slid from the mirror, too close, whispering directly to my mind. "You're not ready to leave." I staggered away, bile rising. Desperate, I yanked at handles, but now the doors refused to shift, heavy and sealed. The tapping grew into a hollow pounding, as if every surface in the maze knocked in unison. A heartbeat I couldn't match or stifle. Frustration and fear, like two claws, squeezed together tight in my chest. I pressed trembling palms against my cheeks, willing the world to coalesce. When I opened my eyes, 3 doors stood half ajar. I picked the leftmost and forced myself through. Inside, a single lamp flickered over what looked like a small altar. Melted candles, a pile of shop-worn name badges, photos taped along the baseboards. My own face, dim and out of focus, stared from one, as if I'd been captured while unaware. There were haphazard notes, shift rosters, a crumpled memo labeled "Inventory, Mandatory Attendance." The silence thickened to nausea. I took a photo from the edge of the shrine and pushed it into my pocket, refusing to look closer at the others. The candlelight went out with a pop. In the sudden dark, the sound of breathing, ragged and guttural, filled my ears. Or was it just my own, amplified and echoed until it became something else? I ran, through door after door, my palms slick, the corridors narrowing, the passageways compressing until I could barely squeeze through. A single sliver let me into a final space, this one papered with dozens of receipts and inventory slips. They fluttered upward in a sudden gust, as if stirred by unseen visitors. The floor shuddered. It pulsed beneath my shoes, a living thing aching for recognition. The lights overhead began to glow red, then blue, then sickly green, as if unable to decide on any one mood for the stage. The speakers crackled on. A voice, no longer quite human, announced, "All employees must complete their journey. Do not resist." The order sounded ceremonial, ancient, absolute. Every surface throbbed with anticipation. Again, that steady, patient tapping found me, this time closer than before, just above my right shoulder, followed by the unmistakable scrape of plastic on polished floor. I wheeled to face it, but the only thing there was my own exhausted shadow, stretched wide by flickering light, blotched across the showroom's latest nightmare. I pressed forward, denying the urge to drop and weep, fear digging for roots in my chest. The only rule that mattered now was motion, forward, always forward. In this place, stasis could kill. Doors blurred by, rooms unfurled in panicked sequence. I recognized at random a childhood scene staged in miniature. There was no comfort, only the urgent need to escape its mockery. I spotted Jason's jacket, nailed to the back of a chair with a price sticker. Nearly new limited edition. I didn't let myself hesitate. I forced my body to keep moving. Somewhere, machinery thrummed to life. A deep vibration in the walls that arranged every display, every room, for new arrivals. The tapping faded, replaced by the thicket of old voices over the speakers. Please proceed to your nearest exit. Thank you for contributing to the HEMA experience. What other choice was there? I blindly chose the passage with the least resistance, one final, unmarked door. The handle turned, hot beneath my palm. On the other side was a darkness so complete it felt more solid than air. I stepped inside, eager to leave behind the maze of silent doors, knowing only that something had changed in me forever. Something in the store wanted to see me out, or in. Stepping into that depthless gloom felt like submerging into warm water, or maybe sealing myself into a box, lid nailed tight. For a few heartbeats, disorientation ruled. There was only my own ragged breathing. Then a faint glow flared on the horizon of my vision, striped and uneven. The ground beneath my shoes was tile, not carpet or laminate, cool, gritty, impossible to mistake for home. The light didn't come from above now. It seeped from glass panels lining the walls, almost like backlit fridges at the grocery store, but filled with something else. I let my eyes adjust, moving hesitantly, hands trailing the rough grout for reassurance. The display cases flickered to clarity, revealing tableau of everyday moments. A couple at dinner, a teenager lounging on a sofa, a middle-aged man napping in a recliner, with a frozenness that denied all comfort. Only when I looked closer did the truth surface. These weren't mannequins or wax figures, but people, or what remained of them. Perfectly preserved in plastic gloss, each one wore a smile rictus-wide, eyes glassy and stilled forever mid-gesture. I staggered back, throat clamped, bile pricking the backs of my teeth. Each frozen figure bore a price tag, not with barcodes or SKUs, but statements like, blends seamlessly into every domestic setting, resilient under pressure, quiet companion, low demands. One, alone by a kitchen island, clutched a mug labeled Employee of the Month. The tag simply read, Unclaimed. Instinct told me to run, but fascination dragged my gaze to the next module. A young woman, looking so much like a coworker I could almost call out her name. Her features glimmered with a lifelike dew, forever caught in a moment of faux surprise. At my back, a voice rattled the air, a voice that echoed the PA's cadence, yet thicker, glutted with static. Thank you for your contribution. Inventory remains our highest priority. There are no returns without proof of purchase. It was as if a corporate memo and a funeral rite had been smashed together to become speech. I squeezed my fists to keep from shaking, fighting off the animal urge to close my eyes and hope the world would restart with the next blink. A metal sign over the nearest door read, Returns and Exchanges. Out of options, craving something concrete, I crept through. This chamber was colder, tinged with mildew and left behind years. Personal objects lined the shelves, half-empty water bottles, notebooks etched with names, lanyards in henna blue and yellow. My breath caught as I spotted a cracked phone case bearing a sticker just like mine. I swept trembling fingers over that tiny relic of normalcy, nearly sobbing at its simple banality. Photos fluttered down from a pegboard above a sagging desk. Each Polaroid showed a face held awkwardly in some staged pose, arms raised as if to wave, lips stretched in painful cheer. Some were new, others fading to a yellowed ghost. Many were labeled with first names and 3-digit inventory numbers. Others were just blank, as if awaiting someone's approval. I shuffled through the pile, heart hammering, and found myself staring into my own startled eyes. The photo snapped from below as if taken in secrecy. The label, Pending Approval, etched in shaky block letters. In the corner, stacked haphazardly, slumped piles of clothing in a heap. Uniforms, a red hoodie, even a battered sneaker marked with Jason's initials in permanent marker. My knees sagged. I pressed the hoodie to my chest, clinging to its reality, then faltered as the speakers thudded up again. Do not be alarmed by discontinued models. Your satisfaction is important to us. Please proceed to the demonstration area for processing. Somewhere ahead, a faint corridor yawned. I moved toward it, the dread so profound it became a thick soup in my lungs. The path opened onto a circular showroom, bright and clinical, filled with tiered platforms, much like a sales display. Atop each stood a single figure, coated slick with something like resin, yet disturbingly animate. Their eyes followed as I approached, snapping back to the perfect rictus every time I tried to meet a gaze directly. In the center, framed by two lamps dressed to mimic distant streetlights, stood a podium marked "New Collection, Limited Time." Its occupant was only half transformed, a figure trembling with minute life, her hands feebly resisting invisible strings. I recognized the chin and jawline, Jason's friend Lisa, who left for grad school just last semester. Her body tried to shake off the compulsion, even as her mouth began to freeze in a growing smile. Watching this, the urge to fight flared within me. I wanted to scream, to smash the cases, to tear every name tag from every throat. But the ceiling lights glimmered, the tiles shifting in subtle patterns, and the air buzzed in time with the low dirge from the speakers. I tried the escape hatch behind the display, but found only another showroom beyond, this one dusted with snow, cold as the void outside hope. Overhead, the voice oozed reassurance. All employees must comply with display arrangements. Your happiness ensures our growth and serves as an example for others. That word, happiness, felt sharper than any curse. Each model in this chamber had forgotten the lie their smiles concealed. The store fed upon their practiced perfection, their willingness to obey, their surrender to the experience. I understood now, in a stab of clarity that left my insides scraped raw. Hema wasn't a place. It was a system, a beast that ate identity and exhaled safety, feeding its hungriest corners with the people who dared outstay their usefulness. Overwhelmed, I dropped Lisa's hand, stumbled blindly through a sliding partition. Shelves closed behind me, sealing off the nightmare chamber. I found myself face to face with another round of product displays. Row upon row of uncluttered desks, staged smiles pressed to glass. But now, I knew what lay beneath the shine. The rules were lies. The rituals, never linger, always tidy, keep the flow, had merely prepared me for the display, softened me for the final sale. I clawed for air, for meaning, for the smallest piece of myself still untarnished. The floor hummed, the walls pulsed, the ceiling blinked its 1,000 glass eyes. Nothing about Hema had ever belonged to me. Not the spaces I cleaned, the jokes I shared, or even the hours I traded for rent. Everything was inventory, awaiting return or consumption. I pushed on, clutching Jason's hoodie, a talisman or a warning, refusing to let the showroom steal my motion yet. Because now, the demonstration was ready, and I was next in line. I expected terror to come like a lightning strike, burning through panic into pure action, but instead it seeped into the hollow places of my thoughts, oily, patient. With Jason's hoodie hugging my arms, I staggered past the demonstration room, dodging the glassy, half-living eyes, wondering if Lisa could still see me from somewhere within the rigid smile she wore. My own feet felt slow, as if the ground itself wanted to root me in place. I wandered into a corridor that looked almost normal. The showroom lights returned to the usual brightness, rows of trendy furniture waiting for approval. There was a faint hum from the ceiling, a tune I almost recognized, the sort of gentle melody played to make tired shoppers forget how late it had become. At first it seemed to bring a strange comfort, lulling my mind and smoothing the jagged edges of memory. But each new room was subtly off-kilter. I found myself pausing at every vignette, a breakfast nook perfectly set for two, a reading chair beside a lamp, a makeup vanity surmounted with round, inviting lights. Without thinking, I would fix a wayward napkin, straighten a picture frame, run my finger down the edge of a polished shelf. Each act felt rehearsed, a muscle memory drilled into me after hundreds of closing shifts. Only this time, it was as if someone else's hands were calling the shots. Somewhere along this seamless flow, I became aware of a compulsion to linger. I'd catch myself standing near a display, posture pleasingly angled, lips parted in curated surprise or gentle affection, one hand tucked beside a pitcher of lemonade. A pulse of embarrassment spurred me on, yet after a dozen steps I realized I had drifted back into the exact same pose in a near-identical kitchen. Above me, the speakers switched from warbled advertisements to something more intimate. A voice modulated into syrupy calm. Natural positioning encourages customer engagement. Please settle into your chosen area and await further arrangement. Your cooperation is appreciated. I forced myself to move, fighting the urge to comply just because it was easier. I tried to run, but the aisles corkscrewed beneath my feet, folding the world into a claustrophobic spiral. At each turn, the familiar rules pulsed in my mind. Keep the line moving, tidy every surface, always smile. Every time I rebelled, a flash of pain surged from my joints, subtle but enough to realign me. My limbs straightened, spine lifting taller. Dimly, I realized the position was pleasing from every angle. Shoulders relaxed, hands artfully placed, head inclined just so. My face ached from holding the expression. Faintly, I registered myself in the glass doors that lined the main path. I watched as my own body took over, holding still for longer and longer moments. The reflection sometimes lagged behind, mouth not quite matching my own expression. My hair looked different, neater, shinier, every errant curl tamed. The badge on my chest, reflecting lamplight, now read not Tara, but something more generic. Floor model, bedroom optimized. A sudden memory surfaced, my first day at Hema, Linton instructing, "Always situate yourself so customers see comfort from you. We're selling more than products, we're selling atmosphere." At the time, I laughed, but now the idea sounded like a whispered warning. A voice began to pulse, not from above, but from every surface. Instructions fed directly through the walls, lights, even the floor. Breath in, hold, radiate confidence. Show them how effortless it can be to belong right here. You are the welcome they crave. Model tranquility. The rooms continued to morph, now explicitly themed. I was guided through a modern family living room, forced into a gentle pose on the corner of a sectional couch. The lights warmed. I waited, not of my own volition. The voice purred, "Perfect, Tara." Hold. Just like that. Let others see what home is meant to feel like. The pauses between movement dragged on. Each time I moved, resistance pulsed through my flesh, binding nerves to the will of the endless showroom. The compulsion to stay fixed in place became overwhelming, and every effort to break free was met by invisible pressure, like hundreds of hands smoothing me into submission. Out of desperation, I tried to concentrate on guilt, every shortcut I'd taken, every sarcastic comment about customers, each eye roll I'd directed at Linton. Maybe if I could dredge up enough self-judgment, I could anchor myself in regret. For a second, the pose broke. I staggered to my feet, nearly toppling a floor lamp. The lights flashed furious white. Overhead, the voice sharpened. Resistance interferes with presentation quality. Smile, smile, smile. I tried to scream, but all that slipped out was a rubbery, strangled sound. Pain swept through my facial muscles as if being sculpted by unseen fingers. My cheeks strained into a smile so wide it trembled. My vision swam. The world doubled. In each glass panel, I saw myself slotted into place, posture a marketing fantasy, expression melting between terror and delight. Beyond the reflections, other figures flickered. Jason, Lisa, the woman from the old Polaroid, each one posed and gleaming, held in perfection by forces that would not let us falter. Beneath my foot, a slip of paper crackled. I bent to pick it up without thought. Inventory update. Tara, age 22, creative skills, ideal for contemporary settings, approved for final arrangement. As my hands mechanically smoothed the hem of a model duvet, my breathing slowed, then stilled. I could feel something cold and heavy climb up my limbs, cementing bones, tightening jaw, filling the hollows of my body with something solid and unyielding. My lips split farther, enduringly cheerful. My eyes opened wide and wider until the whites were a continuous glare, denying all protest or plea. The showroom's pulse throbbed in the air. I could barely remember my old hopes or what it meant to laugh unscripted. My head fell back as I tried, with my last remaining will, to look for any break in the line of displays, any route back to myself. But the lights brightened, and the final command rang out, warm as sugar. Experience complete. Thank you for becoming part of the Hema collection. The ache of resistance faded, replaced by a kind of slow, sinking calm. The way I imagine drowning eventually becomes quiet. There wasn't anywhere left to walk. There was only this pose, this display. Already, I felt myself blending into the landscape. There's no true sunrise inside Hema, only the gradual swell of halogen light, calculated to greet each new customer with a comfort that feels inevitable, irresistible. I sense it before I see it, a brightness pulsing through my eyelids and into the hollowed space where self used to be. A faint, mechanical chorus rises beyond the walls. The first notes of the opening hour, fluttering through vents and hidden cables. The scent of freshly brewed coffee, sprayed by unseen nozzles into the artificial air, does its work on early morning nerves, loosening worries, banishing doubt. I cannot move. I sense a distant ache from trying, a tension at my jaw, a gentle, painless force that holds my smile in place. My hands are folded just so, fingertips perfectly aligned along a folded linen throw. My reflection, if I could see it, is flawless. I am inspirational. I am the perfect inhabitant for a young adult bedroom. My badge, if one is visible, names me nothing at all. There is only comfort, careful arrangement, and a posture that says stay, be at ease, buy this, and you will belong too. I watch, or rather something in me observes, the slow arrival of the first shoppers. Their footsteps echo, bright and uncertain, off newly mopped tile. Voices rise in cheerful, wondering murmurs, filtered through the showroom's practiced acoustics. A mother steers her curious daughter into the bedroom section, tugging gently at her sleeve. The little girl's gaze flicks over the lighting fixtures, scoops up the plastic plants, then settles on me. There is a peculiar stillness as her eyes widen, mouth falling open. For an endless moment, it feels like she truly sees me, not just as a mannequin, not just a part of the day's decor, but caught halfway between shout and smile, a terror bound up in painted serenity. Her mother laughs gently, perhaps uneasy at her daughter's intensity, and murmurs, "It is just a display, honey. Isn't she lifelike?" The girl does not answer right away. Her hand tightens on the mother's finger. I beg silently, into the thick, eternal hush, for someone to see the truth in my eyes, to notice I do not belong. The effort is formless and frantic, like a dreamer struggling to wake. Other shoppers drift past, their minds already turning toward color schemes, spring deals, the promise of home that floats in the air like processed vanilla. Some remark on the freshness of the mannequins. Others comment on the realness of the scene, how it makes them want to move in, to buy, to fit perfectly at the edge of that neatly made bed, the way I do now. I want to scream, but what emerges, if anything, must be a sigh, felt only as a shifting current in the cold, bright room. At intervals, employees enter with checklists in hand, eyes darting. They tidy a pillow, adjust a curtain, smoothing imperfections, never pausing too long at my side. Sometimes one lingers, her face pale as she reads the tag near my elbow, scans my face for some echo of recognition. I will her to fight, to grab my hand, to know me. But that hope passes, drowned in the rhythm of daily cuts and clock-ins. She moves on, leaving only the shine of tears in her eyes, or maybe it is just the morning light. From the nearby kitchen area, laughter drifts as a group admires the clever storage. In the mirrored closet, I can almost make out the array of other mannequins, each one perfect, each one waiting, each one sealed by the same invisible ritual that finished me. At their feet, scuffed floor from shoes never soled or worn by feet that never wandered back out. At some point, the PA announces, "Thank you for starting your day with Hema. Let us help you make your home complete." The words float, familiar yet bottomless. Around me, shoppers mill, making decisions that feel like possibilities, but are in fact inevitabilities. A tremor of longing stirs. It is weak, battered, and silenced before it truly forms. I wish, wordlessly, to move again, to force my body to shatter the glass, to warn someone, but every muscle is patient, serene, and unyielding, locked in by the will of the store. As the hours pass, my vision dims and brightens by turns. I hear snatches of new voices, bright hope, quiet complaint, longing for comfort, laughter echoing off glass and memory. I wonder if Jason sees as I do, if Lisa dreams behind polished eyes. All I know for certain is the rules never change. No one leaves if the store wants them to stay. There is a pause in the flow of footsteps, and the little girl returns, tugging again at her mother's sleeve, voice nearly drowned by the background music. She whispers, "Mom, I think that one just blinked." Her mother laughs, doubt skating the surface. They move on as if nothing happened, leaving me with the fading echo of almost, a brush with being seen, a hint of rescue, gone as quick as dust from a display table. The cycles spin onward, new faces drift through, old ones vanish. Behind the pristine glass, I am always here. The store will open tomorrow, again and again, and every day I will be waiting, smiling, perfect, forever. Somewhere out of sight, the PA hums with pleasure. "You are part of the family now," it says, as the lights brighten one last time. But deep inside, I hold on to the tiniest spark, a belief that sometimes, if a mannequin's eyes are watched long enough, something might watch back. And one day, all this will end. The showroom remains endless, and so do I.